This is part 2 or 3, just depends, of the Lamb and Kingdom of Priests, how the Old Testament is revealed and is wrapped up in Revelation, not just Genesis, but multiple books, which I'm going to go over Deuteronomy today. And I might touch on something that I had spoke about the other night. I put up a video and took it back off, but I wanted to go over this. These are the last words. This is the last chapter in Revelation, where Messiah is saying, "Behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me, to give every man according to his works. I am the Aleph and the Tav, the covenant, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. Blessed are they who keep his commandments, that they may have the right to the tree of life, and may enter through the gates into the city. Excluded are the ones that did not keep the covenant," which the commandments are the covenant. I've read that in different times. In Deuteronomy, it talks about, and he told you his covenant, which he directed you to do, the 10 words, and he wrote them upon 2 slabs of stone. 10 words, it's the 10 utterances of God, it's the 10 commandments. And they were put in the ark because God wanted to keep them. They're the covenant words, and he sits upon them on the mercy seat on the Ark of the Covenant. And the Amplified version of that says, "And he declared to you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform, the 10 commandments, and he wrote them on 2 slabs of stone." So Messiah renewed the Passover lamb covenant in his flesh. He is the word, and he is the blood mark, and everything. I wanted to go over Deuteronomy, various verses, various chapters of Deuteronomy, how Deuteronomy plays out in Revelation. But first I wanted to read over what I had read the other night. Let me find the page. This is the book Out of the Iron Furnace, which was a lecture that a rabbi had given in the late 60s, I think, early 70s, and it was initially called the Staff of God, which that's what the Aleph sign is. The Aleph and the Tav symbols that have appeared over the United States, which they also appeared during Sodom and Gomorrah. They appeared before the Exodus, the first Exodus, and they're going to appear soon, I think next year. Anyway, I'm going to read where it's talking about the exile in Egypt. The exile in Egypt is the prototype of all future exiles. The Exodus and every detail associated with it represents a cosmic phenomenon overlapping the bounds of time and space, encompassing within itself events of both past and future. We may recall the words from Psalms quoted earlier. He has made a memorial for his works. The Lord is gracious and full of compassion. The Exodus stands as a permanent reminder of both great events past and what is in store for the future. Micah the prophet is even more explicit in stating the character of the Egyptian exile and Exodus as the leitmotif of all future exiles and redemptions. "As in the days of your coming forth out of the land of Egypt will I show unto him marvelous things," Micah 7:15. Clearly, the redemption of the Messiah is inexorably bound with the Exodus from Egypt. The future redemption will mirror that of the Exodus of Egypt. And rabbis say over and over how our second Exodus will be like our first. In a video that I made last night, I had gone over the Old Testament, what's happened in the Old Testament and what's coming in Revelation. And I said how the plagues and the destroyer and the covenant mark and terms, the king priesthood, the song of Moses, and a dwelling place for God is repeated in Revelation, or I'll just post that video again later, where it talks about the plagues and the destroyer, covenant mark and terms, a kingdom of priests, and then the song of Moses will be sung again, but it's called the song of Moses and the Lamb. And there is a dwelling place prepared for God, and there's a dwelling place prepared for us to dwell with God. The bride being the dwelling place, and the temple, which is Messiah, and God the temple. And how that in the Old Testament, the two witnesses brought plagues. Moses and Aaron with God, worked with God, they brought the plagues. And that they are from the tribe of Levi, and that they work together to prepare the people and bring them into a betrothal covenant with God, and that together they escorted the people in betrothing and getting the Passover lamb covenant, right, marks, the circumcision, the blood covenant of the lamb, which is the covenant, and the terms to the covenant, which is the 10 commandments, that they brought the people to marriage with God, but they, through the golden calf, they ruined that. Anyway, Revelation plays out the same. That the two witnesses are going to be prophesying, and they have a testimony, which they testify, and they are given power, just like Moses and Aaron were from the tribe of Levi, to bring down, to cause it to not rain, to turn water into blood, and bring any kind of plague that they wish upon the people. And they're coming prior to the marriage supper of the Lamb, because the two witnesses have to come before the marriage. According to Jewish wedding traditions, the two witnesses are the two friends of the bridegroom, and they help bring about they help the bride, and then they help with everything concerning the marriage. But I want to go over Deuteronomy. First, I'm going to go over this. So over and over through the word, we see and we know that the covenant is the commandments. They are the 10 words of God. Deuteronomy 4 isn't the only place that it's stated there. It's stated in different places in the word. And especially here, it wraps up those who keep the commandments. They get to go into the promised land. They get to go into paradise. They have the right to the tree of life, and they're allowed through the gates. And we see that in Deuteronomy, and I'm going to find the page. So it's a prerequisite. If you're not in covenant with God, how are you going to go into his temple? How are you going to be a king priesthood and go into his temple? What is in the end is the new temple, which is God and Messiah are the temple, and we're part of the temple. But we are his king priesthood. We minister to him. That is what happens in the end. It's the new Jerusalem. But anyway, Revelation, this verse, and we go to Deuteronomy 6, where it says that these are the commandments which the Lord commanded to teach you, that you might do them in the land whither you go to possess it, that you might fear the Lord thy God. Fear the Lord keeps us from sin, to keep all his statutes and commandments. All these words which I command thee this day shall be in your heart. God's going to write them in our heart. And thou shalt bind them for a sign upon thy hand, mark. And it shall be between your eyes, your forehead. It's a sign on your hand and your forehead, keeping the covenant. Write them upon the doorposts of thy house. That's reminiscent of the Passover lamb covenant. When we are in covenant with Messiah, the lamb, it marks us, even our house, our dwelling, and thy gates. It shall be, when the Lord God have brought thee into the land promised, full of all good things. Don't forget the Lord brought you out of the land of Egypt. See, Revelation, we're coming out of Babylon and Egypt. It even states Egypt in Revelation. From the house of bondage. Thou shalt fear the Lord thy God, serve him, and shall swear by his name, making an oath. You shall not go after other gods of the people around you, lest the anger of the Lord God's wrath be kindled against thee, and destroy thee from off the face of the earth. The Lord commanded, and it shall be for righteousness, if we keep all the commandments. But there's another verse where it talks about commandments and possessing the land are connected to each other. Okay, Deuteronomy 8:11. Keep all the commandments which I command you this day, that ye go in and possess the land. And the land that is not as the land of Egypt, but the land is the land of hills, valleys, and drinketh water of the rain of heaven. Hearken diligently under my commandments to serve God, and I will give you the rain in your land, the first rain, the latter rain. And then he talks about, let not your heart be deceived. Messiah even said that, talking about the last days. Be not deceived, that you turn aside and serve other gods, right? As the beast and the false prophet bring about, and worship them. Therefore, lay up these words, my words, in your heart and in your soul. Bind them for, and he says it again, a sign upon your hand, and that they may be frontlets between your eyes, that thou shalt write them upon the doorposts of thine house and the dwelling. So this is a prerequisite, keeping the covenant, which are the commandments, that you can go in and possess the land. But I'm going to start from the beginning of my notes and go over these things. Okay, so Deuteronomy really is it's a repeat of things from the Exodus, things that happened to the children of Israel in their exile and their exodus from Egypt. And in this book, it talks about enemy altars, which in the last days they would make an image, right? And they would worship. And you worship through set up altars. Deuteronomy talks about false prophets and the protocol for these things. And so I'll go over that. I read this. The commandments are the covenant. That's why it's called the Ark of the Covenant. It's called the Ark of the Testimony. That's why in the end we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony, because they are the covenant terms. And that's what covenant is, the blood mark of the blood covenant and the terms to that blood covenant. So in the last days, so it says Deuteronomy 4:30, in the narrows of you and all these words find you in the end days, and you turn back unto Yahweh your Elohim, and you hear his voice, given that Yahweh your Elohim is a compassionate mighty one, he will not make you sink down, and he will not damage you. It's talking about in the latter days, in the end days, and tribulation coming. This is the amplified version of 4:30. It says, when you are in tribulation and all these things come upon you, in the latter days, you will turn to the Lord your God and be obedient to his voice, his commandment, coming in covenant. For the Lord your God is a merciful God, and he will not fail you, nor destroy you. And I just wanted to go over Exodus 4:32-35. It's talking about the covenant and how great of a thing it is, and that God made an oath with them, because during Passover and the unleavened bread and everything, that's really the feast times around there is called Feast of Oaths, where we vow to God and God vows to us. For ask now of the days that are past, which are before thee, since the day that God created man upon the earth, and ask from one side of heaven unto the other, whether there hath been any such great thing as this great thing is, or hath been heard like it. Did ever people hear the voice of God speaking out of the midst of fire, as thou hast heard and lived? Or hath God essayed to go to take him from a nation from the midst of another nation, by temptations? No, it's talking about the Exodus. By signs, by wonders, by war, by a mighty hand, and by a stretched out arm. This is God's talking about through his plagues, but through his oaths that he brought them out, by great terrors, according to all that the Lord your God did for you in Egypt before your eyes. Unto thee it was shown that thou mightest know that the Lord, he is God, and there is none else beside him. And this is just another version of that. And this is just what I read before, Deuteronomy 6 and 2, 6, 8, 9, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 24. The prerequisite of coming into the promised land, Revelations, is being in covenant. It is abiding by the covenant terms, which is the 10 Commandments. Okay, so this is what we were supposed to do. Not making covenants with the enemy. This is what Deuteronomy 7 is talking about. It says, do not make a covenant with the enemy. And in the last days, people do make a covenant with the enemy, right? They take his mark. When we're in covenant with God through the Passover lamb, we are marked by the blood covenant mark. The enemy has his own covenants. And God says not to do that. Deuteronomy 7:2 says, make no covenant with them, neither make marriages with them, for they will turn away thy son from following me, that they may serve other gods, which is idolatry, which is spiritual adultery, which goes against betrothal covenant. You can't be a bride to be if you are committing adultery, which is idolatry. So will the anger of the Lord be kindled against you and destroy thee suddenly, but thus shall ye deal with them, with the enemy's covenants and stuff. You shall destroy their altars, break down their images, cut down their groves, burn their graven images with fire. The Lord did not set his love upon you, nor choose you because you were more in number, for you were the fewest of all, but because the Lord loved you, and because he would keep the oath which he had sworn to your fathers, redeem you out of the house of bondage. The God is faithful, which keepeth covenant and mercy with them that love him, and keep his commandments to 1,000 generations, and repay them that hate him to their faces, and destroy them. Neither shalt thou serve other gods, for that will be a snare unto you. And it talks about it being a snare in the end, right? Deuteronomy 9:9, it talks about Moses going up to Mount Sinai, and he receives the tables of stone, which is the covenant terms. Even the tables of the covenant, tables of stone, even the tables of the covenant, which the Lord made with you. And the covenant is put into the ark, which God sits upon. It's the testimony, the ark of the testimony, the ark of the covenant. It says in Deuteronomy 10, hew thee 2 tables of stone like unto the first, because this is after Moses broke the first ones, and come up unto me into the mount, and make thee an ark of wood. I will write on the tables the words that were in the first on the first tables, and thou shalt put them in the ark. And he wrote on the tables according to the first writing, the 10 Commandments. And I turned and came down the mountain and put the tables in the ark. The tribe of Levi bears the ark of the covenant of the Lord, to stand before the Lord to minister unto him. And which is interesting because Moses and Aaron were the friends of God in the beginning, and they brought his people into a betrothal covenant with God. And it's interesting that it says the tribe stand before the Lord to minister to him, to bless his name. And then it just talks about Levi just having an inheritance in God and not in land and things on earth. But in Revelation, it talks about his 2 prophets are the 2 olive trees and the 2 torches, but they stand before him. Let me find that verse. Okay, this is Revelation 11, and it talks about that I will give power to my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. These 2 are the olive trees and the 2 lampstands, which stand before the Master over all the earth. So, I mean, it's interesting that it says that, because that's what Moses and Aaron did, and they were from the tribe of Levi, and that's what happens in Revelation. And I already went over that, just Deuteronomy 11. It talks about keeping the commandments to possess the land. It talks about that, but that you will have rain from heaven, which also is interesting because in Revelation, it talks about a river and drinking from the... Okay, let's see. Okay. I am the Aleph and the Tav, the beginning and the end. To him who thirsts, I will give of the fountain of water freely. So the possessing of the promised land and having water, or water from heaven, is repeated throughout there. I thought there was another... Okay, I had to find it. Where God, Messiah says, the Spirit and the bride say, come. Let him who hears say, come. Let those who thirst come. So doing commandments, having the right to come into the gates and to the tree of life, are by keeping covenant, and then you will thirst no more, is just a repeated theme that I read through Deuteronomy 11, where it talks about rain of heaven. Okay, I know this is getting long, so I'm going to wrap it up. Exodus 12:3 just talks again about enemy altars, covenants, and images, and what we are to do with them. We are to overthrow their altars, to break their pillars, burn their groves with fire, hew down their graven images, and destroy the name of them out of the place. And not make covenants with them, not to come into covenant with them. And if we did by any thing out of our own ignorance, we can break their altars and break covenants, and come into covenant with God. And Exodus 12, it just talks about coming into covenant with God, staying in covenant with God, that God puts his name where there are sacrifices and vows and free will offerings. And that's how you come into covenant, really, through your vows. It says, and thither ye shall bring your burnt offerings, your sacrifices, your tithe, and heave offerings of your hand, and your vows, and your freewill offerings, and firstlings of your herds. and there ye shall eat before the Lord your God. It's coming in covenant, being in covenant. Then there shall be a place which the Lord your God shall choose to cause his name to dwell there. Places where covenant is made, God puts his name upon them. And it just talks about choice vows again. Your choice vows, you making vows with God, and covenant with God. And the last thing I want to talk about is Exodus 13, where it talks about false prophets. So all through Deuteronomy is really a reflection of what's going on in Revelation. So it says, if there arise among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and giveth thee a sign or a wonder, and the sign or the wonder come to pass, where he spake unto thee, say, let's go after other gods, which thou hast not known, and let us serve them. Thou shalt not hearken unto the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams. Ye shall walk after the Lord thy God, and keep his covenant commandments, and obey his voice, and cleave to him. And that prophet or that dreamer of dreams shall be put to death, because he hath spoken to turn you away from the Lord your God, which brought you out of the iron furnace, the land of Egypt, and redeemed you out of the house of bondage.